Hello again. A while ago, I wrote a book called Broken Britain, and it was written because at the time the new Prime Minister in the run-up to the general election in the UK was called David Cameron, and he used to use the phrase Broken Britain all the time. Because he was talking about a Britain that had been created by Tony Blair and the Labour Party and Gordon Brown, and David Cameron used to talk about broken Britain and this concept of feral children who roamed the streets waiting for any opportunity to mug someone or to take drugs or to, just general yobbish behaviour. So David Cameron used this maxim about broken Britain and how things basically under a Labour government had gone to the dogs. It's not unusual, of course, for politicians to find a spin, look at society and try and capture the voters' hearts by talking about what's wrong with society. And so my book in 2010, which was called Broken Britain, still for sale on Amazon, was about looking at Britain. But more than that, it was also, speaking as a counsellor, it was about looking at the individual in society, because there's obviously more to society than its disparate parts. There is the individual in society. So what I wanted to look at in the book is how society affects the individual and how the individual creates the society, or what Marx would have called collective unconsciousness. How there is an individual in society, but also that society is the individual. So the book Broken Britain looks at that. Following on from that, quite recently, in the last decade or so, has been a move in therapy that talks about the Biopsychosocial Model of therapy, which is quite good really, because it looks at the three main aspects that form an individual, which is biology, sociology and psychology, because you can look at one of those things and miss the others. So if you look at the individual holistically or as a whole, what you can do then, biopsychosocial model, you look at their biology. So they may have a problem in their biology, it might be some disability of some kind, or it might be some sort of imbalance, not a chemical imbalance, but some sort of problem in that way, a medical problem maybe. So that would be the biology. Psycho or psychology would be, say, a mental health issue or problem, or they could have a personality disorder or a common mental illness such as anxiety or depression. So that would be psychology. And then sociology, which would be looking at their living conditions, and maybe they've not come from a very good place, maybe they are suffering with social situations that they find insurmountable. So to help the individual most fully, you have to possibly adopt this biopsychosocial model, which ties in quite well to Broken Britain, because in that book I'm looking at different aspects of a person's life and using the metaphor of a tree in order to look at that. So the tree needs roots, it needs water, it needs sunlight, and it needs basically good nutrition. And the individual is like that as well. So if you've got an individual person who's born who has a very difficult childhood, maybe there's abuse, maybe there's bereavement, unexpected things, faulty attachment problems, so that would be a social problem, which sometimes, quite often, leads to mental health problems. So in other words, the worse our early life, the more difficult becomes our later life. which is obviously common sense. If you've been abused or been bullied or had a terrible early life, then you're more likely to suffer with mental health problems later on in life or from teenage years onwards. So that's quite a common correlation. And so Broken Britain looks at that. Just like a tree or a plant, the individual needs good environment, good nutrition, and in other words, good drivers in order to thrive and in order to flourish properly. Quite often that's not the case, and that's what Broken Britain, the book, and that's what David Cameron, I think, was talking about. It's very difficult to address all those things at once, so you've got to do what the neuro-linguistic programmers would call chunking, where you take a little bit at a time in bite-sizable pieces and look at those various chunks, if you like. Biopsychosocial model. So look at the biology, has the person got an ailment of some kind or a disability? Look at the psychology, is there a mental health problem? And look at the sociology, is the person's life out of kilter in some way? If you address all those things, then you can really help improve someone's life so that the person, and therefore the society, becomes less broken. And that's important because broken people make up the society. Margaret Thatcher said there was no such thing as society, which is obviously rubbish. So the person in society makes society as a whole. So that when we see someone begging in the street corner, that's a representation of our society, and it means that not only they have failed, perhaps they've made the wrong choices, perhaps they've done this instead of that or that instead of this, and not only have they failed in some sense, but we have also failed as a society, because a society who creates homelessness and desperation is a society that's not functioning properly. It's a society that's stacked at the top with the wealthy and the decision makers, and it's a society for whom some people fall off right at the bottom end, the ones who suffer, the ones who must be content to take crumbs that fall off the capitalist's table. So that's the broken Britain, and that's what needs addressing. And politicians can do that, obviously, by changes in policy. Unfortunately, it never usually happens. Quite often it's lip service to things like that. So if you look at a book like Broken Britain, what I've tried to do is address those various aspects of society and the individual within society in order to help promote positive growth. If you fancy buying that book, like I say, it's on Amazon. You don't have to, you can just listen to me on here if you like. Thanks for watching again, see you next time.